If you want to live a long time, the one thing you must do is not die from cancer. Anyone in this room that wants to live a long time, please stand up. Right. We're at a longevity conference. Why isn't everyone standing up? All right, for those of you, remain standing for a moment, please. For those of you that want to live a long time, please stand up. Now, those of you that are standing, if you've screened for cancer in the last 12 months, please sit down, otherwise remain standing. Those of you that are standing are all at risk. Please have your seats. Cancer is a very big problem, and it's littered with alphabet soup, all kinds of acronyms. CTC, ctDNA, cfDNA, MRIs. My goal today is to educate you on what all of that means so that you can parse through that C of alphabet soup, inform yourselves, and make the most intelligent and correct decision for you personally as it pertains to cancer screening. Cancer is a fundamental threat to humanity. It is now the #1 cause of mortality in high-income developed countries. It has exceeded in those populations cardiovascular disease by 2x. 40% of people will get cancer in their lifetime. In fact, it's going up. The National Cancer Institute just increased the incidence over a lifetime of a cancer diagnosis from 39.5% to 40.5%. Half of men and 1/3 of women will be diagnosed with cancer in their life. The key to curing cancer is catching it early. Survival at stage 0 is 99%. Cancer has become such a big threat to humanity. Let me quantify that for you. Last year alone, there were 10 million recorded deaths in cancer. And obviously, there are more unrecorded. At that rate alone, not even accounting for population growth or the incidence of cancer rising rapidly in the younger population, which is disturbing. Just at 10 million lives a year, over 100 years, that is 1 billion lives lost. We are talking about double-digit percentages of global population. There are not many things on this planet that actively threaten double-digit percentages of global population. 1 billion lives in 100 years. In the history of the world, if you were to add up all casualties from all known wars ever in human history, the best historians put it at 350 million. You're talking about a loss of life that's 3 times of that in just 100 years. If you look around this room, half of men and 1/3 of women will be diagnosed with cancer. So there's a few problems. Today, there's only recommended screening for 5 types of cancer. You have mammograms for breast cancer. You have pap smears for cervical cancer. You have colonoscopies for colorectal cancer. You have PSA for prostate cancer. And you have lung CTs for lung cancer. Now let's break that down a little bit further. Depending on your gender, you're not going to do all of them. Men aren't going to get mammograms and pap smears. Women aren't going to get PSAs. So if you're female, you'll do a mammogram for breast, at most a pap smear for cervical, and typically only if you have risk factors, you're a smoker, have some history, would you even do a lung CT. And maybe a colonoscopy once in 5 years for colorectal. 4. Men will only do a PSA for prostate, colonoscopy, colorectal, and again, lung CT only if needed. 3, there is nothing standard out there for pancreatic, liver, bladder, esophageal, gastric, brain, skin, thyroid, adrenal, all the other organ tumors, ovarian, uterine, go on and on. We don't even screen today for half of cancers, just a small fraction. That's a problem. Let's talk a bit about this cancer screening alphabet soup. Let's start with the fundamentals. The fundamentals start with something known as a CTC, which stands for circulating tumor cell. What that is when you have cancer, when you have a solid tumor, breast cancer, lung, colorectal, pancreatic, liver, bladder, brain, esophageal, gastric, thyroid, adrenal, doesn't matter. Any organ tumor from which 100 million people a year suffer across the globe annually. The primary tumor itself, the lump, generally does not kill you. What kills you is the tumor sheds tumor cells that circulate through your bloodstream, known as circulating tumor cells, or CTCs, the acronym for short. And the CTCs spread the cancer in your body in a process known as metastasis, and the metastatic effects make your other biological organs dysfunctional and you die. That's how you die from cancer. You don't die from this lump, generally. Now, a lot is known about CTCs, these circulating tumor cells. Number one, they are known because they have been studied extensively and exhaustively over the past 30 years. A simple Google search would reveal thousands of papers on CTCs. One, they are known to be the drivers of metastasis, the spread of cancer hematogenously in the bloodstream. Two, they are known to be homologous, meaning similar to the primary tumor, because they are cells of the primary tumor. They have the same genome. They are micromodels. They are mini-me's in transit. Three, they are known to be prognostic, which means predictive of outcome. High CTC count, bad outcome. Lower CTC count, relatively speaking, better outcome. For those of you that are scientists in this room, that's correlative, not causative. What's causative is high underlying tumor burden, high CTC count, bad outcome. Lower underlying tumor burden, i.e. less tumor mass, lower CTC count, relatively speaking, better outcome. Number four, they are known to have the same response to drugs like chemo or immunotherapies because they are cells of the primary tumor. Again, same DNA, same genome, micromodels. All of this that's known about CTCs has been studied in exhausting detail. And CTCs are whole cells. It's tissue. When you go and you get a mammogram, for example, if they find something that's of concern to them, that does not give you a diagnosis, that's a screen. After that, they have to go in and cut. They have to do a tissue biopsy. They have to take a needle aspirate. If they do a colonoscopy, they have to shave polyp to grab tissue. If they do a lung CT, they have to shave the lobe to grab tissue. That tissue is sent to the doorstep of a pathologist. That's a doctor that specializes in looking at cells and tissue. That pathologist picks it up, puts it on a glass slide, stains it with 100-year-old stains. If those stains light up, they render a diagnosis positive for cancer. If those stains don't light up, they render a diagnosis negative for cancer. That is how all solid tumors and their subtypes are diagnosed today. It is based on that tissue. Here's the interesting thing about that. Tissue in itself does not respond to those stains. Tissue is a structural matrix. It's a container. It is comprised of cells. And if it is healthy tissue, they will have healthy cells and they will not react. And if it is tumor tissue, they will have tumor cells and they will react. CTCs, like we just discussed, that are dislodged from a primary tumor are cells of that tumor tissue. They're entirely homologous. Now, a tumor cell is a biological cell. It is a messed up, dangerous, aberrant, malignant, cancerous cell. But it is a cell. It has the components of a cell. It has a nucleus. It has a genome with the DNA sequence. It has a cytoplasm. It has membranes, so on and so forth. When that CTC is dislodged from that primary tumor and begins to circulate, typically one of three things are going to occur. A, that CTC will go through what's known as cell apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, where the cell and all its components, including the genome, will fracture into little bits and pieces and be released into your bloodstream. B, that CTC will get eaten by white blood cells, macrophages, which is what your immune function is, which is what's supposed to happen. It literally looks like a Pac-Man coming in and chomping down on it. It will crunch that cell and break it and all of its components, once again, including the genome with the DNA sequence. Or C, it will go through your capillaries, where the shear forces, the physical stresses will fracture that cell and break it into little bits and pieces. When any of those events occur, little scripts and scraps of DNA from those tumor cells are released into your bloodstream. Those little scripts and scraps and bits and pieces of DNA are what they call circulating tumor DNA, or ctDNA, a type of cell-free DNA. Cell-free DNA just means it's away from the cell, it's freed up. So we have circulating tumor cells, which are whole intact cells with the entire genome. Then we have circulating tumor DNA, which are these little scripts and scraps of the genome that are incomplete and not whole cells, not tissue, that float around. In the cancer screening market today, there are a whole bunch of tests that are trying to be developed or coming to the market to be able to detect cancer. The vast majority of them use either biomarkers or scraps of DNA. Here's what you need to know about that. They take those scripts and scraps of DNA, they put them in a black box. That black box runs mystical algorithms, AI, artificial intelligence, ML, machine learning, NGS, next generation sequencing, with heavy computational processing to extrapolate and guess if we have a tumor cell. The problem with that is it's a guess. We can debate the quality of the guess based on the quality of the algorithms in this magic box, but it's a guess. The gold standard in medicine to be able to detect disease in pathology is tissue. ctDNA doesn't give you tissue. It's a scrap of the genome, which itself is a scrap of the cell. So you will see tests out there that are based on CTCs, whole intact cells, where they can actually look at them. And that's very important because CTCs look very different than healthy cells. They are typically much bigger, 20 or 40 microns instead of 8 or 10. They are morphologically different. They have 5, 6 nuclei. They're multi-headed rather than 1 or 2. They have high NC, what are known as nuclear to cytoplasmic ratios, which means the nuclei comprise, because there's so many of them, or so big, 85, 90% of the cell rather than 15 or 20. They are hyperchromatic, which means too much DNA, because they have so much nuclei, they have too much DNA. These features are so atypical that my 6-year-old daughter could look at that and tell you that looks weird. A board-certified pathologist that looks at tissue and cells their entire life will not mistake a tumor cell for a healthy cell. It's an elephant and a rabbit. With ctDNA, you don't have the whole cell. You're guessing in this erroneous extrapolation, which has problems. You don't have a lot of signal. That has problems because they have to amplify the signal. That's where they use a technique called PCR. Some of you have heard of that from COVID testing. Some of you have heard of that from rapid HIV testing and occupational hazards when you get pricked in a hospital and they have to test you. What PCR does is it takes that signal, which is very faint when it first occurs, you have very little virus, and amplifies it so you have enough signal to detect it. The problem is, those are whole intact viral organisms. When you take scraps of DNA that are unstable and you try to amplify it, guess what they're gonna do? Mutate. So you're gonna have a healthy sample come in, you're gonna mutate it through the amplification, and you're gonna get a false positive. And false positives are dangerous because false positives cause lots of unnecessary and costly intervention. Radiation with scans, invasive procedures, surgical biopsies, even treatment. So you have CTC-based tests, you have ctDNA-based tests, and then you have another category, which is MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, where they stick you in a tube for an hour and they try to image you. Few problems. One, it's not a pleasant experience for most. A lot of people are claustrophobic. 2, they'll often strap you down in the tube because they need you to be still. You'll be in like a straitjacket. 3, MRIs are very sensitive on soft tissue. As we age, our bodies change. We develop bumps, lumps, cysts. It doesn't mean you have cancer. When you go into an MRI and they kick you out and they say, okay, we found 26 bumps and lumps. What do you do with this information? They're not telling you if you have cancer. Your physician or your practitioner is not going to chop you open and biopsy you in 26 places. All that does is create anxiety. It's almost like a false positive risk because you don't know. Again, they have to cut it. They have to get tissue, either from CTCs or by cutting, one or the other. You know, all of you should get screened. It's very important. And it is important because you need to detect early and stay on top of that. Again, if you want to live a long time, the one thing you must do is not die from cancer. I got into this for very personal reasons. My colleague, Denny, and I that founded this company, we got into this because we both suffered unbearable losses of loved ones. Losses I don't want any of you to ever go through. That's why him and I started this company. We're very different. I also run 2 nonprofits, 501c3 nonprofit public charitable organizations. One of them is called Cure Sonia. In that, we fund research at leading institutions, Stanford, MD Anderson, USC, City of Hope, in cancer. We do financial assistance for underprivileged families that cannot pay for their cancer care. I'm one of the largest registrars of bone marrow donors in the world. I've registered over 10,000 people in 300 drives across 60 cities. I was nominated for the National Board of LLS, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, for my contributions to combating cancer. Cancer matters to us. Outcomes matter to us. Impact matters to us. I just started the second nonprofit, which just launched, another 501c3 called Save a Firefighter. Because unfortunately, firefighters, which are the guardians of our community and do a lot of service for us in our community, because of the first responder service that they provide to keep us safe, suffer from up to 3 times the incidence of cancer. Most people don't realize firefighters don't die from fires and collapsing buildings. They die from cancer. It's 72% a line of duty death. We're donating $2.5 million of tests to the Dallas Fire Department, our home city, to screen the entire force, which we're going to expand nationally. Oh, thank you. A lot of people say, I don't want to know. I understand that sentiment, but what I'd like you to consider and understand today is with cancer, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is a death sentence. So please take control of your health. Please take that power back in your hands and get yourself screened in whichever way you see most fit. Thank you.